Have you ever walked into a house without a table? And I don't mean an Eastern-style home, like in Ben-Hur, but a truly empty house, where you step into the living room and there isn't even a chair to sit on. It feels strange, even agonizing, because the table is more than just a piece of furniture. It's the sacred altar of the home, the place of communion, where people gather and share life. It is the place of welcome, union, and covenant. The table is memory, it is presence, it is the very center of the house, the axis around which daily life turns. It symbolizes order and the meeting point of everyone in the household. And it was at such a table, in a small village in Denmark, that one cook managed to transform the entire atmosphere of a community. Through nothing more than a single meal, one dinner that lasted only a few minutes. And this, in essence, is what Babette's feast shows us. It feels strange, because one might say she didn't gain anything in return. In fact, she lost 10,000 francs. But what would she have gained by going back to Paris? What would she even be looking for there? The truth is, even though she was French and lived in that city for a very long time, she knew that there was nothing left there. Paris, in all its splendor, charm, and glamour, had nothing to offer her. Because for Babette, what truly mattered in Paris was never just the prestige of being head chef at the Café Anglais. That was simply work, a way to use her talent, to do what she knew best. But once the purpose was gone, it meant nothing. Because she didn't cook only for glory, she cooked as part of her vocational mission as a wife and mother. And through a French Revolution, she lost both, her husband and her children. After all, what does it profit a man to conquer the world, to gain worldly glory, and yet lose his very soul in the process? Because this is exactly what we also see in the two characters who serve as possible romantic interests for the two sisters in that small Danish village. A great opera singer and a celebrated general. From the outside, they had everything: professional success, worldly prestige, all the recognition one could ask for. Yet, when they reached the twilight of their lives, both were empty, weighed down by an existential crisis.
Kan resultatet av en rad segrar under många år utgöra ett nederlag?
Through the presence of their beloved, whether in a letter or in person, they confessed the same truth: my life would have been better if I had stayed with you. If I had embraced this simple, quiet life of an ordinary little community, trying to live out the Christian message. A Christian village marked, of course, by traditional Christian symbols, set by the sea, nourished with fish and bread, echoing the life of the earliest Christian communities. A community that, in its simplicity, points us to the path of a full life, one that does not end in the same emptiness faced by the general or the opera singer, but in a life of service. And perhaps this is the remedy for today's existential crisis: to step outside ourselves, to stop seeking to be served, and instead to serve, wherever you are. Serve those right in front of you, in the very place where you stand. For all of us are called to live a life of service. That is actually the reason why we are in this world: to help. Because we have a mission, and our mission, our calling, our vocation, appears precisely when we look at where we are. Because, as the saying goes, I am myself and my circumstances, and, from there, I begin to serve those around me, right where my hands and heart can reach, even if I suddenly lost everything I had.
Si vous ne me prenez pas à votre service, je n'ai plus qu'à mourir.
In one way or another, this is what the two sisters did, and it gave them a life they could still call joyful, even though it carried the ordinary pain of pruning our own tree and making choices that shaped the entire path of the rest of our lives. They put down roots, and through their sacrifice, the community survived. Yet, of course, it was not a perfect community. They lived clinging to the memory of a long-dead Protestant pastor, repeating his words, but gradually losing the living fire of faith. For they trusted in a mortal man, instead of entrusting themselves to something transcendent, older than centuries, larger than them all. They were folding inward, trapped in worldly disputes and petty accusations, always bound to the past, one blaming the other. With a faith slowly fading, they were dimmed by monotony, drowning in themselves, clinging to the small concerns of this world, instead of letting go and lifting their eyes to what is beyond. But then, and this is the paradox, it was through something utterly worldly that their gaze was lifted once again, through something as physical, as earthly, as a simple dinner. For Babette was not merely someone who tossed pots on the fire. She was an artist, whose story reflects the drama of a person who, in order to fulfill her vocation, must find a way to make her talents bear fruit. She poured herself into her work with such care, such attention to detail, such love, that what emerged was more than food. It was art. It was the union of body and soul at a table. It was nourishment that became transcendent, a supper that raised hearts toward the eternal. And this too can be our lives. Even in the smallest, most ordinary tasks, if done with love, with care, and with excellence, they can become occasions of transcendence, elevating those around us and pointing everything back to the one mission we all share: to love God, to serve our brothers and sisters, and through this, to gain entrance into eternal joy, where suffering passes away, and where we will at last see love himself, face to face. Because in the end, it is not luxury, fame, or success that will save us, but love poured out in the ordinary, until it becomes divine, lifting us toward the eternal.